Hello everyone. Recently I made a plugin for Cinema 4D called Springy, and I'm excited to show it to you. This is an animation workflow plugin. It can be used to add overlapping motion to animated objects. It's straightforward to use, it's non-distractive, and how's about we go to Cinema 4D and check out these simple examples how they actually work. So let's jump into Cinema and bring our first scene. This is a group of objects that is animated from left to right. You can see every object is a child of the previous one, and only the top parent has keyframes, the others they don't. So let's select the children, go to our extensions menu and create Springy. Now hit play and you can see the effect is already working. So you can create Springy by selecting the objects first, similar to how you can add effectors to a cloner, and the objects are automatically applied to the object list, and then you have options to control the effect. So here is just the position. Let's move to another example. In this arm, this is animated with the rotation instead of the position. So we have joints. The joints are animated, they're inside a hierarchy, and they're driving this mesh. So first tip is to only add Springy to the objects that actually need it. So instead of selecting everything and adding Springy, which could be messy, I'm just going to select the objects that are actually driving this animation, which is the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist. So let's select these 3 joints and create Springy for them. Hit play, and we see this is not the effect we expected, right? The objects get disconnected, and that's because the spring is applied to the position, not just the rotation. Even though the position is not animated, the local position of the objects is not moving, the global position in space is actually moving, right? So Springy can use that, but in this case we don't want it, so we turn the position off and we get the spring effect we expect. The objects do not disconnect at all. Let's try to add spring to the finger as well. So let's select the finger joints here and add Springy to them. Click play. We see we have the same problem. So let's disable the position, and it's not doing what we expect. And that's because the order matters. Like with the deformers in Cinema 4D, you should place them in order. So because the animation is driven by the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist, we're going to have that Springy on top, and after this, the index Springy is going to take place. So now we see it's working, but it's very, very soft. So we can just decrease the strength of the effect. Let's put it on 40% or something, and we get something closer to what we would expect. So let's move to another example. So here we have a hierarchy of objects. There are no keyframes, it's just driven by this vibrate tag. So let's select the children again and add Springy. Again, we just want the rotation in this case. So here, what I want to show is the types of overlap we can achieve. So I would like to get something wavy, but the spring mode is not giving me the result I expect in this case. There are other modes. There is the smooth mode, but here the overlap is not strong enough, right? It's just like a delay, a friction. That's why there is this third mode, the smooth and spring. It's a combination of the two. So if we use it, we see now we're getting this waveform we expect. And if I reduce the stiffness of it, the effect is exaggerated. So I can actually make it so the end is almost not moving. Let's increase the frames here. So we see the end is almost sticking around the same position, and we're getting a very clean wave motion here. Let's try another example. So here I want to show you that you can control the different channels that the spring is applied to. So let's create Springy. We see the effect. I'm going to reduce the stiffness so we can see it more. So not only we can enable or disable the position or rotation, we have control over the individual channels. So let's lock these attributes and select the object so we can actually see the axis. And let's say I only want the spring to take effect for the X axis. I can turn off the Y and Z axis, and then we can see it's only overlapping around the X axis. Same goes if I want it only on the Y axis. Now we see it's only twisting, and the same is for the Z axis. Now it's only twisting around the Z axis. And this is particularly useful in situations like for the spine, let's say, if you only want it to have overlap when it goes side by side instead of for the twisting of the spine, you can control this. And the same goes for the position channels. So let's move to another example. So here I have this character from Mixamo, and it has these stepped motions that it's going through. And I'm going to break the rule that I told you earlier about putting it only on specific joints. I just want to apply spring to the whole animation, right? So I'm going to select everything. I'm going to create Springy, hit play, and everything will explode, right? So I'll have to do a few changes. Let's go to our attributes here. So one change is I'm going to turn off global position, and the other change is I'm going to turn off cumulative rotation and hit play now. And now we're getting the result we expect. So let's talk why this worked. Let's enable this and enable this. Let's focus on the position first, shall we? Let's turn off the rotation, focus on the position. All right, first of all, we have the same problem. Everything is moving, even though every single joint is only rotating, is not moving this local position at all, except for the root, right? That's the only joint that is moving. So if I disable the position, you see the character is going to snap from one place to the other. But if I turn off the global position, all the other joints don't have any now it's working on local space, and the other joints don't have any local position that is actually changing, except for one. So this is the only place where the spring will be applied to, right? So now the position is springing, and it's springing as a whole. So let's go to the other option, the cumulative rotation. Let's enable back the rotation. All right, so the rotation is too strong because it's a deep hierarchy, and as the spring is going, every level of the hierarchy is inheriting the spring effect of the previous level. So the spring of the parent is affecting the child, and then the child has an extra spring effect which is affecting the next child. So you can see the effect is really adding up. By turning this off, it's gonna treat every object like a flat hierarchy. So every object is gonna be treated individually, and we're getting a spring effect for the whole thing like we would expect. Alternatively, I could just really turn on the stiffness here to reduce the effect, but you can see it really adds up. But it's also a different effect. This is a hierarchical effect. So let's say the edges of the finger are gonna feel more wobbly because they are deeper on the hierarchy, right? So it's a different effect. If you want like equal spring for everything, just turn this off, and then you can reduce the stiffness, and you're getting basically the expected result, right? So it depends what you're after. Let's check out this example. So this example is a mechanical bull, and there are no keyframes again in this animation. Everything is driven by this vibrate tag. So this vibrate tag is rotating this mechanical bull, and then I have parent constrained the character on this mechanical bull, basically. So this is the global control of the character, and it's parent constrained to the mechanical bull. So I would like to add some overlapping motion to bring it to life, to get the dynamic effect, something like a ragdoll. But setting up a ragdoll is pretty difficult. Let's see how we can do this with Springy. I'm going to select the spine first, all right, and create a Springy object, hit play. We see the same problem we saw earlier. We need to disable the position. In this case, we don't want the character to be disconnected, but then it looks like it's stuck to the saddle, right? Let's disable the rotation and focus on the position first. We don't want it to be stuck on the saddle, but we don't want the character to explode either. So here, if I disable global positioning, it's not going to work like before, because nothing is moving on its local position this time. It's not like before that there was one object moving on its local position. Here nothing is moving on the local position. So this is not going to work. Now I can use something else. I can use this, strength per object. This is the strength of the effect for every object on the object list from top to bottom, right? So the first object on the list is going to be on this side. The last object on the list is going to be on that side. So I want the position to be on the beginning of the list and not on the end of the list, right? So let's do this. Let's try this. So now only the pelvis and maybe a little bit of this object is going to have the position spring and not the other objects. Let's hit play, and indeed we see only the base of the spine is moving. And we're getting a very nice result. Let's change this to smooth, because this is like a friction. This is like sliding basically. And we can increase the stiffness. And we're getting a pretty believable result. And we haven't touched the rotation yet. So let's enable the rotation. By default it's too strong. So let's increase the stiffness for it. And maybe we can also reduce the strength as it goes on the top of the spine as well. So the head, let's say, it will not move uncontrollably. So now it really looks like he's trying to hold onto the saddle. And again, this has no keyframes absolutely. Now one more thing to do is we can select the legs and add an additional springy to them. And if we hit play, we see now they're not pinned in position anymore. And the default settings are working pretty well to give them an organic feeling. Now, this is completely procedural, which means we can come and adjust the pose at any time. And because it doesn't have any keyframes, we need to click initialize here. And we see the same effect is applied on the new pose. And let's see another final example here. So here I have another group of objects that is moving, but this time these objects are not parented to each other. They're all siblings. So the animation is the same for every single object, right? Let's add Springy to them and hit play. And we see the spring effect is the same for every single object because the animation is the same for every single object. So let's try to vary it a bit. I'm going to use smooth mode, and I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to use the graph slider to change the strength of the effect for every object, right? So now we see, because it's a smooth, some objects are delayed and some objects are less delayed. So what I want to show here is that I can create another springy object that is affecting the same targets, right? So this time I'm going to affect every object equally and add a spring effect to them and hit play. So you can see I can layer multiple springy objects on top of each other without thinking twice about it, basically. So these examples conclude this video. I hope you could see how easy it is to use Springy. I hope you can find it useful for your workflow. You can go to orestes.com/products to check it out. And if you decide to purchase it, I hope you will find it useful. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.